Hey, do you know what time it is? That's right. It's time for Coach Lindy's podcast. The podcast to get you moving. Hi, I'm Lindy Hutchinson, a certified life mastery consultant with the Brave Thinking Institute. As a life coach, I help others transform their life as I have mine. It's not easy, but it is possible, and it most certainly is worth it. Each week, I'll share insights that inform, inspire, and ignite in you your desire to create a life that you love. So let's find out what's going on this week. Welcome to the podcast. It's always delightful to be with you. So here's my guessing game. I know I tested your patience. I'm sorry. Honda. When you hear the name Honda, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Well, I know those of us at a certain age, probably the Honda Civic, the car, and there is also the Honda motorcycle. And for those who are informed, probably many other products. Well, it all started with a gentleman whose last name is Honda. Out of respect for this gentleman and his family, I will not try to pronounce his first name. For those of you who are listening and say, oh yeah, it was Shito or whatever it is, I thank you for knowing that. Well, what about Honda? Well, Mr. Honda, when I heard his story, I was totally blown away. I had no idea. But you talk about someone, I don't really believe in luck, but someone who seemed to have bad luck. I would say it was him until the very, very end. But he is most certainly a fantastic study in someone who was, which is our power word of the week, unstoppable. So if you think you've had a bad day, when you hear the story of Mr. Honda, you realize that actually things might be going really, really well for you. Evan Carmichael is a podcaster, and he has many other credits to his name. He has a beautiful presentation about Mr. Honda. So I would encourage you to look up Evan Carmichael and put Honda, because you will probably find his YouTube presentation of Mr. Honda's life. And he does it in beautiful detail. I think it's over an hour. And he does a gorgeous job, and it certainly helped me to appreciate how much Mr. Honda went through and what is a great study in unstoppability, persistence, and how it can pay off. So right now, I'm just going to whet your appetite a little bit about Mr. Honda. He was born into a humble family in Japan in 1906. His dad was a blacksmith who owned and operated a bicycle repair shop. His mother was a weaver. Well, apparently Mr. Honda was very bright at a very young age, but traditional education was really not for him. So his grades weren't too swift, and apparently it was standard, as it used to be here, maybe they still do it, where the parents receive a copy of the grades, and Mr. Honda's grades were not good. So being ingenious and being in a shop with a lot of tools and bicycle parts, he actually crafted a rubber stamp, which was something that apparently all families had, to validate that they had received and recognized their child's grades. He fashioned one out of the rubber of a bicycle pedal. And not only did he make one for himself, he apparently had a little side business and created several stamps for other students. That did eventually come to a stop, and he was punished, and he didn't do that anymore. But it certainly shows some ingenuity He fell in love with motors at a very young age. It says that as a toddler, he first saw and heard a car in his little village. And the smell of it, or the exhaust that you and I would probably consider repulsive and disgusting and nauseating. As a toddler, he said he viewed it as perfume. So he was in love with engines. And he decided at 15, without any formal education, he left home and he went to Tokyo looking for a job as an apprentice, a mechanic apprentice. I believe in Mr. Evan Carmichael's podcast. I'm using Wikipedia. In his podcast, he mentions that he went to a garage that hired him, but not as a mechanic apprentice, but as a babysitter. Apparently, the owner had young children, and he wanted him to babysit his young son. Well, this is pretty deflating for someone who was chomping at the bit to learn about how to build engines. The good news is the demands of the garage, it kept expanding, and he quit being a babysitter and actually was allowed to start working and learning these gas-powered engines. He was able to return home at 22 years of age, and he opened his own auto repair shop. And again, not mentioned here in Wikipedia, but apparently because he was so young, 22, and looking at some of the pictures, he was very young looking, which in many cases is not bad, but people did not feel comfortable turning over their vehicles for him to fix. So it says that he ended up he kind of scrapped around for jobs, so that made it pretty tough. Things picked up a bit, and he actually started racing cars. Unfortunately, in 1936, when he raced what's described as a turbocharged Ford in the first Japanese automobile race, he was seriously injured. Fortunately, he was able to recover, but due to the urgings of his family, which at this point he was married with children, no more racing for you. Fortunately, in 1937, the next year, he did get a contract with Toyota to create piston rings. Unfortunately, not long into this particular venture, a few years in, one of his plants was destroyed in 1944. There's ups and downs. This is kind of an abbreviated storyline. And then there was another plant that he had running that in 1945, the next year, was destroyed by an earthquake. So as you look at his timeline, there's one problem after another problem after another problem. And yet, if you go to another source where there's more detail, Evan Carmichael's, for example, he talks about how all during these ups and downs, he would go to university, he would get books, he would study and study and study. So he knew he needed to keep learning. And that's what he did. Now, after the war, and after he sold the scraps of his plants to Toyota, what he could salvage, in 1948, he started producing a complete motorized bicycle. Apparently, one of the first ones was way too heavy. So he was able to retool that and lighten it up. And he ended up creating what they call the Dream Series of motorcycles. It started becoming acknowledged for being a superior motorcycle. He also reconnected with a longtime friend who he hired as his financial advisor and bookkeeper, and they put their heads together, showing that you may be excelling in one area, but there may be another area, and you can't do everything. If you're running these companies, you really need teamwork. So with the help of his friend now being in charge of finances, they ended up becoming a multi-billion-dollar, multinational, best-selling motorcycle in the world, even surpassing Triumph and Harley-Davidson especially here in the United States. He remained president of Honda, and he did, of course, this particular information doesn't cover all the different stages of the cars and how he finally was able to get, like the Honda Civic was one of the best-selling economy type cars out there. He retired in 1973. People magazine regarded him as one of the top 25 most intriguing persons of the year. In 1980, he was dubbed the Japanese Henry Ford. So he worked very hard. He set up foundation, and he and his wife did many acts of mercy and generosity. I don't know why my mouth doesn't work. What's interesting is after his retirement, he and his wife did little things like skiing, golfing, racing cars, hang gliding, and ballooning at age 77. And Mr. Honda also was a highly accomplished artist. Wow. And we all have 24 hours in a day. Sounds like he packed in more than one lifetime. There's much to respect and admire about Mr. Honda, losing his plants to a bombing because of the war and an earthquake the next year. And then they're all through there. There was ups and downs, a lot of discouragement, but he kept going. He kept learning. And then he had, before he died in 1991, he did many, many generous acts of contribution, received many citations, and fortunately, I love a feel-good story, and this is most certainly one of those. It was wonderful to see him end up on top. The good guy won. And this week, our word is unstoppable. And our Train Your Brain thought is Mr. Honda, unstoppable and amazing. George Burns, the legendary George Burns, in our Hey, That's Funny file said, you know, in those days, the best painkiller was ice. It wasn't addictive, and it was particularly effective if you poured some whiskey over it. So thank you, George, and thank you for joining me. And keep building a life that you love, creating a life that you love, because you're worth it. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for joining me this week. I look forward to being with you every week. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, please email me at coachlindy@lindyhutchinson.com. My name is spelled L-Y-N-D-I, so it's Coach Lindy, L-Y-N-D-I, at Lindy Hutchinson, LYNDIHUTCHINSON.com. I value what your input is, and I'm always open for suggestions and ideas. If you will like and or subscribe to this podcast, that would be wonderful. I appreciate it. And I enjoy anything that you might want to send in, or if you would like some more information about coaching, send me an email and I will get back with you, and we'll talk about how you can create your best life. Have a good week. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.